Yo, what's up, my people? What's up, my people? We're back in here for another Talking Tactics Daily. The main pod is down there. You can follow the instructions as we go through this. Shout out to people that listened, watched for the past couple of days. Like I said, we're going to keep it going. So, we have some good football today. We're going to try to get through it in no more than 30 minutes. So, here we go. I said yesterday, if Chelsea messed around and got a result, that I would be shocked. Fair to say that that's what happened. They did get a result. They drew with Manchester City 1-1. It was a game where, if you look at the stats by the end of the game, it looks more or less even in terms of number of shots, XG, possession, passes. It doesn't look like Chelsea were like vastly outplayed, but they were. Anyone who watched that match would understand and recognize that Manchester City had the whole game basically to win the game. The goal that they scored was decent. Haaland obviously had hit the post previously. Foden had a good shot. So Manchester City were making chances, and Chelsea were basically offering nothing. I think Estevao had a shot in the first half that was quite interesting, but basically nothing came of it, of Chelsea's play for the vast majority of the game. So that Manchester City were entering at a time at 1-0 was almost a credit to Chelsea that they more or less didn't deserve. Chelsea showed up without their manager, obviously, with I think an under 21 or under 23 manager named Callum McFarland. And it was quite obvious that they were there just not to get beaten. I've seen this once before, certainly with Antonio Conte, where you go to the Etihad and you're just there. Just don't beat the brakes off of us. And if you ask most people, I would think the average scoreline prediction of that game probably would have been like 3-1, 4-1, maybe 2-0, somewhere in that region of like 3-1, let's say. So that Chelsea made it to the end of the game down 1-0 with a chance. I mean, football, it's the famous Brian Clough quote, but it only takes a second to score a goal. And Manchester City just couldn't find that finishing blow. Yesterday, I called Lewandowski's goal kind of like it happened in garbage time. But you do need that 2-0. You do need to stamp your authority to give yourself that extra bit of cushion. And if Manchester City had scored the second goal, there was no way Chelsea were ever going to score two. But Chelsea can score one. Any team can score one. And Enzo Fernandez in the 93rd, 94th minute pops up with, the surprise on his face in this picture is quite funny because he had, I think, 3 bites at the cherry, 3 bites at the apple, whichever fruit you like, 3 bites at the banana, 3 bites at the orange. I don't think people bite orange. Anyway, let's not get hung up in sayings. He had 3 bites at it and finally scored. And Chelsea escaped with a draw. I mean, it's not of super consequence in terms of their European ambitions, I wouldn't think. A point at the Etihad is fine, but it's just 1 point in the grand scheme of things. But for Manchester City, I would say the narrative of this match week is the inability of Manchester City to take advantage of a wounded Chelsea and Arsenal's ability to correct a mistake that they made going down early to Bournemouth and then being able to turn that around. So Arsenal finding a way to rescue themselves and City kind of shooting themselves in the foot by not taking advantage of a weakened Chelsea by pretty much every metric. That could be telling, those 2 points that you drop relative to Arsenal's consistency of winning. It's not a good look. So yesterday I was like, Aston Villa are cooked because they're 6 points back. Manchester City are also now 6 points back. It's 48-42. So obviously What Manchester City have that Aston Villa don't is they have a game against Arsenal to come. Aston Villa already played Arsenal twice, and most recently they got blown out 3-0. So on the Chelsea angle, how do you word this? Chelsea are an enigma. Chelsea, they drew against what was the last few results? They drew against Newcastle. They lost against Villa. They drew against Bournemouth. And then, they split with their manager. They bring in a youth team guy, and they mess around and get a draw at the Etihad when nobody was really believing in them. So Chelsea are just annoying in that way. That it's hard to predict what the board is going to do. When the manager is stable in there, it's hard to predict what he might do or she might do. And it's hard to predict what the players are going to mess around and do. So the narratives, I suppose, are more interesting in this instance than the actual game itself. It does seem like Liam Roy Sr. is certainly on his way. All reports are looking or are pointing in that direction. So we'll see what the future holds. I'm sure they'll try to get him in before next weekend, if it's possible. So, but because the Blue Co is all together, they have to find somebody for Strasbourg before they can allow Roy Sr. to go Chelsea. So it's going to be interesting. Let's take a peek at the Premier League table. So we got Arsenal, City, Villa, Liverpool. Liverpool in this crisis, striker with a broken leg. The thing that popped into my mind, I can't say. They got players everywhere, not cohesive. They're still above Chelsea. They're still above Manchester United. Brentford are 7th, which is insane considering their manager is now the Spurs their former manager is now the Spurs manager. So, but no, if we look at do you know what? I did want to talk about that. Maybe not today, but there was a thought that Arsenal could break Chelsea's 15 goals conceded record. Nobody's breaking that thing. It's too stupid. Like, Arsenal's defense has been spectacular this season, and they've still conceded 14. So 2 more goals and that record stands. So that's one of those, if people watch American football, the Miami Dolphins that went unbeaten, they went like 16-0, and the players all get together and drink champagne once all the other teams have lost and have done so for like the past 40, 50 years or whatever it is. That's something that Chelsea defense of, who would it have been? Gallus, Jeremy, Carvalho, Terry, and Czech. They should be popping champagne on people. and Mourinho. Mourinho should be the one buying. But the table, if you're looking for a title race, the table isn't looking fun. It's just looking like, It's like, if results go the right way, there could be a title race, of course. But I think Arsenal have positioned themselves in a place where it's feeling like, certainly after this round of games, because I would have assumed Manchester City beat Chelsea, but when they drop points and you beat Bournemouth, it's Arsenal's to lose. It's Arsenal's to lose. But let's get to Real Madrid. So Real Madrid played today without Kylian Mbappe. Kylian Mbappe is going to be out for, I think, a matter of weeks. So I did see him at AFCON. He was with he was watching Cameroon and Algeria and all those games. So people were like, well, where are the goals going to come from? Kylian Mbappe scored 25, 26, 27 goals this season. I don't think anybody else has more than, certainly nobody else is in double digits. Vinny might be the closest. Maybe he has 7, 6, somewhere around that. I don't know. So where are the goals going to come from? Because Mbappe is driving this car. And if he's not in the car's not going to move. Well, Real Madrid play Real Betis, and I thought it was quite interesting. No, let's start here. I thought Jude Bellingham had a really good game. He was pressing well. He was finding passes. He was hustling. I thought he was maybe my player of the match. But then you can't give player of the match to somebody when another player on that team scores a hat trick, can you? So the player who scores a hat trick, a perfect hat trick at that. The first goal was a brilliant header from a corner from Rodrigo by Gonzalo. And then the second goal, I think it was Valverde who put in a cross, but it wasn't a great cross. But Gonzalo chests it, volleys it with his right foot. And then the third goal was like a flick with his left. So it was a perfect hat trick. Very good set of goals. That's why he's holding up three fingers there. Yeah. And then the other two goals were scored by Asensio, also from a Rodrigo corner. And Fran Garcia. Yeah, it was Fran Garcia late in the game. So what I thought was interesting was Real Madrid are always thought to be a Galactico team. So if their superstars aren't there, what's going to happen with them? Kylian Mbappe can't play. Vini and Rodrigo aren't having stellar seasons. Jude Bellingham isn't in the goals like he used to be. Valverde's being played right back and everywhere except places that he should be playing. And that's been kind of the story of the season. Can Xabi Alonso get this team of superstars to follow his lead because the Galactico whisperer and Carlo Ancelotti has left and all of these types of things? Today, at least against Betis, was a game where the academy players, the Castilla players, graduates anyway, found a way to win the game. You had Gonzalo scoring a hat trick. You had Asensio, as I said, and Fran Garcia. Players, people always say that Real Madrid has a good academy. They just don't take advantage of it in the way that maybe Barcelona do with La Masia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I didn't take Spanish in high school. I took French. And in university for that matter, I took French. So my Spanish is trash. In the same breath, it doesn't feel like Real Madrid always have some great academy player there. In teams previous, you can think of ones. But in this particular iteration, it feels like a lot of the players are, export or imports rather. I think in one of the games before the holiday break, there was a player that played against them, that scored against them. I forget the name of the young striker that they had, maybe 2-3 seasons ago, who scored for them. Maybe his name's Rodriguez. I know he scored against them recently. But I can't really think of any oh my goodness, this great academy player. They don't have Lamine Yamal and Messi's and Xavi and Iniesta. That's not Real Madrid. However, in this instance, they needed them, and they came through. And it's something that Have Hope and I on the regular podcast have always been talking about. If Real Madrid could just find a center forward, it doesn't matter the type. It could be a Ibrahimovic type. It could be a Michael Owen type. It could be, it doesn't matter. Emil Heskey, Akinfenwa, just anybody. They just need a center forward. I mean, they were doing work with Joselu when they won the Champions League. Nobody would have said, oh my goodness, Joselu is one of the greatest strikers of all time or something like that. But in that game against, was it Bayern Munich, where they needed to find a goal, and he just read the space. He just gambled that Neuer was going to drop the ball, and he did. And he just put it in the net. You need someone with a striker's instinct, and neither Mbappe's working on it, but he's more of an outside or inside forward rather. Vini is, I think, naturally a winger. Rodrigo wants to be a number 10 and play out wide so he can do his dribbling and put in good crosses. They don't have a striker. They don't have a natural number 9. And Gonzalo Garcia is the closest thing in that team to it. So yeah, for the team's sake, it would be really good if Xabi Alonso could find a way to play him with some combination of Jude Bellingham, Kylian Mbappe, Vini, and Rodrigo. One of them is obviously going to have to be on the bench in order to facilitate him being in the team. But any sense of someone who can take and occupy a center back or two, I think would be really, really, really important for Real Madrid moving forward. Not only in the La Liga title race, which I guess we could pull up the table here and take a peek, but it would be very important in the Champions League as well. Because just we know Mbappe plays at his best in a team construct when he's playing off of somebody. Olivier Giroud, to be specific. So let's look at the table. Barcelona are 4 points ahead of Real Madrid. Obviously, there's still a Clasico to come, so that gap could come to 1 point at least if Real Madrid could win that game. But there's a there's a lot more of the story to be told than just that one game. So Barcelona, bro, they won yesterday, which was the most important thing. You can't drop. La Liga is dangerous like that, man. You can't drop points in games that you shouldn't. You just can't, because the quality of those two teams, they'll find ways to win even when they're nominally ass. They'll find ways to win, or be given ways to win if you believe in conspiracy theories. But it is what it is. Is there anything left? I don't think so. I want to keep these relatively quick. And I gotta stop saying let me be honest with you guys right quick, man. I'm a writer. We're just gonna talk. We're just gonna chat. This is just an extra part. I'm a writer. I'm not a talker. So part of the reason why I'm trying to do this is, bro, you can ask Carl and Have Hope anything, and they'll just be able to be like, pop, 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 pop. I've developed, even though I didn't want to, I've developed into like a host. So like asking questions, good at interviews, And if you give me like pen and paper, I can whip up any kind of opinion piece. But actually speaking the opinions, I want to be more fluent. I don't want to be like on and and liking and So hopefully if you do this every day, I'm even talking to myself, but hopefully if I do this every day, then I'll get a little bit better at cutting out some of the flaws that I feel in my own oratory skills. That aside, let's talk about AFCON, bro. So, or I don't mean to gender anybody. Maybe you're not a bro. Maybe you're a cis. Never mind. It's interesting. Cisgendered is where my mind is going. But nonetheless, Brahim Diaz is making a case for being the best African footballer on the planet. Now, does he look like an African? We don't need to get into that conversation. But according to his ancestry, according to his passport, my man is an African. So he's included. Of course he's included. Wouldn't have it any other way, I don't think. Yeah. At least he's making the case for being the best African footballer on the planet who plays for an African country. That's the nuance I'll make. Because if we're going to open the door for Pan-Africanism, then there are Brazilians who could be in this conversation. There are Frenchmen who could be in this conversation. There are Englishmen who could be in this conversation, potentially, perhaps one day. So, yeah, Brahim Diaz is making the case for the best African footballer who plays for an African country. And he scored 4 goals in Morocco's 4 games. Although Morocco struggled a bit with Tanzania. You wouldn't have thought so. I know everybody, again, this would have been a match where people would have predicted Morocco are going to win 3-0, 4-0. Pick a number. Tanzanians are going to get beat down. My friend Have Hope has a whole litany of words to describe some of these beatdowns. I won't borrow any of them. At the same time, I thought certainly in the second half, Tanzania got more into the game, had some chances to score. I don't ever think to take the lead in earnest, but certainly to get the 1-1. Kind of like how Chelsea hung around and found a result against Manchester City. Tanzania definitely had one gilt-edged chance, let's say, to get 1-1 and force the game into added time. But they just couldn't get it across the line. But Morocco, you want to win in style. That would be ideal to win in style. But ultimately, the goal here is just to win. And beating Tanzania, nobody's going to care about a 1-0 scoreline or however you get it done. If you get to the final and you win it on home soil, it'll be a part of the story. It'll even make the story a bit better. Oh, they struggled in the group. They struggled in the round of 16 coming out of the group stage. And then, who knows, they found a way. Like the last AFCON, there was the whole narrative of, man, Ivory Coast were the last team to qualify in third place. And, should they have gotten through? They sacked their manager mid-tournament. Their manager who passed away a couple weeks ago, the Frenchman who was replaced by Faye. He died. Gasset, something like that. He passed away like Boxing Day, I want to say, or somewhere around Christmas. I was like, oh man, that's bad news. But nonetheless, that was Ivory Coast narrative of struggle, and then, oh my goodness, like they find their feet and Sebastian Haller wins them the tournament. Maybe that's not Morocco's story. Maybe Morocco's story is a bit more easy, but at the same time, there's going to be games where you're going to struggle in a tournament, but you just have to win them in a knockout competition. And Morocco found a way to win the game, and that's what they needed to do. The biggest match, I would say, of the day was Cameroon against Africa. Again, I think more people would have picked South Africa to win this game. South Africa are a team that are going to the World Cup. They're a team that has had a manager. I believe Hugo Bruce has been there since 2021, 2022. They're a team that has a relative level of consistency in terms of their playing squad, in terms of the base of players that they have to pick from, which is why they qualified from a group with Nigeria in it, despite being docked 3 points for the World Cup. So I think they were a team that a lot of people had earmarked for at least the quarterfinals, if not potentially semifinal, if things went correctly. And Cameroon were a team that are a bit disheveled in the sense where they're not taking Onana. The days of Vincent Abubakar and Ekambi are gone. This is a new team. This is a younger team with Brahim Diaz maybe being the veteran, even though I think he's played maybe 30, 40 caps. But yeah, they were able to come through. The first goal was very fortuitous. I don't think it was necessarily intentional that the ball lands with Chamadu, Junior Chamadu, who is I think he plays somewhere in the Championship or League One. It landed with the right back, and he basically has one whole side of Williams' goal to slot it into, and he puts it in. They're up 1-0. The second goal was actually well worked. Like if the first goal was more of a mistake, Cameroon's second goal was not a mistake. I forget which South African player tries to clear it. There's a turnover in midfield, or a recovery in midfield. The ball's played to Cameroon's 14. It goes out wide. The player on the wing puts in a great cross. It finds Christian Kofan. He heads it down. Williams again has no chance, and Cameroon are up 2-0. And you're just like, well, I don't see any evidence of South Africa scoring. Certainly not scoring twice. And they did manage to get one late on. Christian Magopa, the Orlando Pirates striker, latches on again to a great cross and just kind of taps it in front of the Cameroon keeper. And you think, well, maybe we get a grandstand finish and all of that, but South Africa just didn't really have it in them to get one. I thought Mbeumo played great. There were some really clever touches, some nifty footwork. His ability to see things on free kicks and with his back to goal, and He's just a very talented player that Manchester United are certainly lucky to have, but Cameroon especially are very lucky to have a player with that level of quality. Um, I thought South Africa, they figured out the tactic maybe a bit too late. Maybe around the 55th, 65th minute, somewhere around there, they realized, bro, like we can really start getting crosses in here and troubling the Cameroonian defense. Teboho Mokoena was really good with his crosses. Then they put in Modiba. They add a striker. So it was Lyle Foster and Makopa. My colonized tongue can't pronounce South African footballers to save my life. But, they added wing play and another striker to just, hey, we got to score twice. So let's go for these crosses. And one of them was tagging and ending up with a goal, but it wasn't enough. So they figured it out too late. No, but I think Cameroon have the makings of what could be a very dangerous team looking into AFCON 2027, which is going to be held partially in Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. And then the World Cup, that's going to be, what is it? Is it going to be around the world? Not the next World Cup, because Cameroon obviously didn't qualify, but the one in 2030, the Centennial one, the one that's going to be like in Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, Morocco, Spain, Portugal, like that one. I think that team, if they develop in this way with Baleba and the rest, I think Baleba's the fourth guy all the way in the back, who's a brilliant midfielder, I think. Not quite Caicedo, not quite on that level, considering the kind of Brighton connections and similarities, but a team like Manchester United, who desperately needs legs in midfield, some steel, some bite, some tenacity, but also an ability to see it pass and play a bit. I think he'd be a great addition. It's going to be really strange not seeing Cameroon in the United States World Cup, but that next World Cup, I think they could make some noise depending on if they get through qualification. And I think that's another thing that the guys and I were talking about in the group chat is the quality that exists on the African continent in this moment is actually quite impressive. Whether it's it is a combination of the lower teams, the usually lower teams, kind of developing their footballing programs, whether it's going abroad and getting diasporic players to fill in teams, which is how you get like Cape Verde going to the World Cup, or, that's, I don't know how you get a better example than Cape Verde going to a World Cup. Or whether it's the legacy nations, like so a Cameroon, a Nigeria, Algeria, Ivory Coast, maybe they've regressed a bit to the mean. Whether it's one or the other or a combination, it's hard to say for sure. But this tournament has been hard to call. And it makes these AFCON tournaments something that are very interesting to watch and dissect and try to figure out like what the hell's going to happen, because there's no real solid idea of what's happening. I should also say, the amount of times that Samuel Eto'o was on the screen and the crowd went crazy, is he selling himself short at being the Cameroon Federation president? Shouldn't he be thinking of like on a George Weah level? Like on now. We understand that Cameroon's president is Paul Biya. He's been in charge for like forever. There was Adam, there was Eve, there was Paul Biya, right? So perhaps it's silly to even suggest that you want to become president of Cameroon when the president of Cameroon just ran for his like ninth term, aged 88, 92, however old he is. But Cameroon football is struggling. It's in one of the worst positions that it's been in terms of not qualifying for a World Cup since God knows when. But every time he went on the big screen, the home fans that had traveled from Cameroon to Morocco were going crazy, just loving him up. So you sometimes wonder if these African footballers are, considering how much we love football. A player like Drogba, a player like Eto'o, maybe I was thinking Adebayor. I don't know if you'd want Adebayor as president. Could you imagine Adebayor president of Togo? Uh, bro, for sure, if someone like Abu Trika or somebody wanted to run for president of Egypt, like they could make it happen. I see him at 30 minutes, so we're already in added time. But yeah, it's crazy how much support Samuel Eto'o was getting. Considering you would think they'd kind of be on his neck a bit, but perhaps there's a more nuanced understanding that he's fighting powers and principalities that are above him that he can't quite beat. So, in terms of Cameroon's sporting apparatus, is there a way to make that bigger? Can we make this bigger? Okay. Can't quite see Mozambique down there, but this is the bracket that we have. So yesterday, Mali and Senegal advanced. Today, South Africa and Cameroon advanced, and Morocco, Tanzania, Morocco advanced. So Cameroon and Morocco are playing each other in the quarterfinal. Tomorrow, it's split. So we're not going to know the exact matchups of the quarterfinals until the 6th. But tomorrow has Egypt against Benin and Nigeria against Mozambique. So all things going how they should. Egypt and Nigeria should go through, and then we wait on Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, should be Ivory Coast. And then the one where it's like flip a coin. Like, you'd be lying if you told me that you knew exactly what was going to happen between Algeria and DRC. Nobody knows what's happening in that game. Nobody. You'd be an idiot to try to predict it. But yeah, I'm leaning Egypt, maybe on penalties. And if Nigeria win every group game and they get knocked out by Mozambique after not qualifying for the World Cup, God help them. Not just the players, every Nigerian across the planet, God help them. So I pray that Nigeria at least make the semis, if not the final. And I know most Nigerians are like, no, we need to win. And I understand that part. But yeah, the Africa Cup of Nations is as always, gives us good narratives, gives us good storylines, good memes if you're in for it. The director of this game, by the way, was not as messy and horny as the director of the Tunisia Mali game. So it can be done, guys. It can be done. In any event, I thank you guys for listening. Leave a comment, leave a like. If you're new, subscribe. We're going to try to do this every day for as long as I have the energy, the stamina to do it. So yeah, we'll have some interesting games coming to us tomorrow, and maybe a little bit more time to discuss some larger geopolitical issues that I think relate to the World Cup, as was related to the last one. So yeah, shout out to you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow. Remember, Talking Tactics podcast is available every week. If you listen to podcasts, audio, it's on Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify, it's wherever you get podcasts. So yeah, we should be coming to you sometime next week, for sure. Peace, 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 peace.